Food mascots are a tradition that dates back to the 1870s. Perhaps the most iconic mascot of all is the one who graces every box of Frosted Flakes, Tony the Tiger. Our man Tony started life as an innocent cartoon, but in more recent years, he's found himself entangled in a salacious scandal that made him an accidental sex symbol. No, really. Today, we never thought we'd hear ourselves saying, "When did Tony the Tiger get so hot?" But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel and let us know in the comments which cereal box mascot you'd like to see us tackle next time. Okay, time to spill the tea. The history of cold breakfast cereal began in 1863 thanks to an American man named James Caleb Jackson. The vegetarian sanitarium owner sought a way to provide important nutrients and cure digestive ailments without eating meat. His solution was a mix of bran and graham flour he called granula, with a U, which will be important later. Granula was so hard it had to be soaked in milk to be eaten. But at the time, the main way to eat cereal was by cooking it on a stovetop, which took significantly more time. So, granula quickly became popular. In 1898, another American vegetarian sanitarium owner happened to invent his own cold breakfast cereal after leaving out wheat-based dough, causing it to ferment. The fermented dough cracked into large, thin flakes, which could then be toasted in an oven and served cold in milk. After years of experimentation, he swapped the wheat-based dough for corn. The man behind this corncoction was Dr. John Harvey Kellogg of the now famed Kellogg cereal empire. He called his invention granula. Dr. Kellogg, we've got some bad news. James Jackson caught wind of Kellogg's new invention and threatened to sue. In response, Kellogg changed the name of his cereal to granola with an O, which was apparently enough to keep the lawyers at bay. But while the two men undoubtedly had similar ideas, their goals couldn't be more different. Jackson was mainly concerned with digestive health, and while Kellogg was certainly concerned with public wellness, his version of cold breakfast cereal was created as part of a more personal quest. As a devoutly religious Seventh-day Adventist, Kellogg was on a crusade to stop people from engaging in self-stimulation, if you catch our drift, or self-polluting, as he called it. One of the primary ways he thought to stifle the sexual spirit was to live off the blandest, most boring diet possible. And thus, granola was born. Perhaps unsurprisingly, there wasn't much of a market for Kellogg's deliberately boring food. So in 1906, his brother Will convinced him to switch things up. Will Keith Kellogg formed the Battle Creek Toasted Cornflake Company and began production on a version of Kellogg's granola with added malt, salt, and most importantly, sugar. They dubbed this spiced-up cereal Cornflakes, and it was a hit. Kellogg swiftly became the most successful cereal company in the world, a title it steadfastly holds today. In between the initial 1863 creation of Jackson's cold breakfast cereal and Kellogg's 1898 rehash, another important breakfast invention was made. General Mills placed the very first food mascot on a box of Quaker Oats in 1877. Apparently content to keep riding the coattails of good ideas. The next notable incarnation of the trend came from Kellogg in 1933. That year, 3 cartoon gnomes appeared in advertisements for Kellogg's Rice Krispies. The gnomes, which were dubbed Snap, Crackle, and Pop, became big stars. It was deliciously ironic. During the post-war era of the 1950s and 60s, Americans were suddenly flush with cash, and the newfangled television was all the rage. Along with their presence on cereal boxes, food mascots started showing up in TV commercials, which forever linked mascots and cereal in the minds of the public. As it turns out, associating your food brand with an adorable mascot is a great way to sell more cereal. The brightly colored packaging and giant, intense cartoon eyes make it far more likely for someone to pick your box up off the shelf. And so, an influx of cereal box mascots flooded the market. This era gave way to supermarket staples like the Cocoa Puffs Cuckoo Bird, the Sugar Crisp Bear, the Lucky Charms Leprechaun, and Crunch Cereal's Cap and Crunch. There were also short-lived failures like the grim Sugar Smacks Clown and the uncomfortable So High mascot for Sugar Sparkled Rice Crinkles. But one of the most memorable mascots to come out during this period was Tony the Tiger. Tony was one of the many mascots to adorn Kellogg's Sugar Frosted Flakes in 1952. The big cat and his other animal siblings were created for Kellogg by graphic artists Eugene Kolke and Leo Burnett. You heard right. Tony used to have siblings. The others included Elmo the elephant, Katie the kangaroo, and Newt the gnu. But only Tony had staying power. He sank his claws into the American public in a way few food mascots can. While nobody knew it at the time, he would go on to be one of the most recognizable faces of food in the world. Everybody loves a tiger in a neckerchief. Tony came out of the gate as both a lovable and memorable addition to the cereal mascot lineup. His iconic slogan,
"Frosted Flakes are great!"
was dreamed up by legendary actor Thurl Ravenscroft, who voiced Tony from 1953 until he passed away in 2005. The trademark bassy growl became an expected and inseparable element of the character, and each new voice actor chosen for the role has done their best to emulate Ravenscroft's performance. In 1958, Tony became the face of his first sports-related campaign, with a series of ads that encouraged sporty children to put a tiger on your team. The campaign was a success, making Tony and Frosted Flakes synonymous with after-school sports across the country for decades to come. In the 1970s, Kellogg expanded Tony's history to include a family of Italian-American heritage, which included Tony's mother, wife, and 2 young children. By 1974, the tiger found his way onto the covers of Italian GQ and Panorama. He was an international icon. Over the years, Tony appeared in countless commercials and print ads, and remained the focal point of Sugar Frosted Flakes cereal boxes, which eventually dropped the sugar to become the universally recognized Frosted Flakes. He showed up on merchandise like t-shirts, lunchboxes, dish sets, and even a promotional hot air balloon. All the while, Frosted Flakes continued to ramp up in popularity to become one of Kellogg's most sought-after breakfast cereals. Other companies began to take notice of Tony's success story, and in the 1990s, Kellogg went to court to protect its tiger. The company alleged that ExxonMobil, best known for its chain of gas stations, was infringing on Kellogg's copyright with their "Put a Tiger in Your Tank" ads, which is suspiciously similar to that old 1958 "Put a Tiger on Your Team" slogan. For their part, Exxon stated that they had been running the campaign for 30 years, so it was a little late to start nitpicking. But for Kellogg's, the last straw was when Exxon started to sell food and beverages with their fraudulent tiger boldly emblazoned on the packaging. The lawsuit eventually went to trial, and after years of legal battles, the companies settled out of court. To be fair to Kellogg's, it makes sense why the cereal company would be protective of their tiger mascot. They've spent over 70 years handcrafting his image and fine-tuning the details. His original design was much more animalistic, with all 4 paws on the ground like an actual tiger. His head was football-shaped, and he smiled passively from his place on cereal boxes. That initial look was quickly readjusted so he stood upright and sported a bright red bandana. In the 70s, he resembled classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons with rounded edges and a distinct blue nose. He was a family man, a soft, cuddly cat. The 90s saw another rebrand, pushing Tony in a more radical direction as he partook in more extreme sports and started to resemble a beefed-up action figure. And as Tony's design continued to modernize, something strange started to happen. His once wholesome image was taken in an entirely new direction. There's no easy way to say this. Tony the Tiger is hot now. Kellogg broadened his shoulders, slimmed down his waist, and gave him inexplicably muscular arms, all while maintaining his deep voice and soft, expressive face. He's into sports, he cares about your well-being, and to top it off, he's great with kids. If not for the fact that he's literally a giant tiger, he'd be great to take home to your family on Thanksgiving. Just don't ask him to bring a dish, because we all know what that's gonna be. Put simply, the internet has gone feral for this new iteration of a beloved children's cereal mascot. From thirsty tweets to entire articles dedicated to describing his eligibility, Tony has been positively bombarded by freaky fans just looking for some tail. 2016 became a particularly tormenting year for Tony, as a section of the furry community made it their personal mission to sexually harass the mascot on social media. For the uninitiated, Furries are a community of people who dress up as and produce art of anthropomorphic animals. While the community isn't entirely based on erotic content, a portion of it is. And so, Tony found himself at the center of an explicit and unofficial campaign of graphic images, lewd messages, and filthy fanfiction. The Frosted Flakes Twitter had to start banning offending accounts, but the tirade continued. It got so bad that they had to politely beg people to keep it PG. The plea fell on deaf ears, And things only got worse when real-life sex symbol Hugh Grant played Tony in Jerry Seinfeld's 2024 film Unfrosted. Considering the express purpose for Kellogg's original granola cereal back in the 1890s, this unexpected curveball in Tony's popularity is pretty ironic. Dr. Kellogg would not have approved. While a good chunk of the internet is still fixated on Tony's sex appeal, he's just as popular today as he was at his inception. Maybe even more so, or better, or worse. Tony's stripes and red bandana are easily identifiable all over the world. He's still a prominent figure on modern Mascot merchandise, and he attended the 2023 Tony Awards to give out consolation bowls of cereal to nominees who didn't end up winning. They should invite him every year. Thanks to him, Frosted Flakes remains one of the most popular cereals on the market, with over 132 million boxes sold in 2021 alone. Still, not everyone is a fan of the flakes. The United Kingdom, Japan, and several countries across Europe have banned Frosted Flakes for the cereal's use of BHT, a chemical preservative that helps keep food from going stale when exposed to air. BHT is known as a carcinogen in rats, though it hasn't been proven to have the same effect on people. Nevertheless, plenty of countries would rather be safe than sorry, so they don't get to experience the tiger that is Tony. Okay, but have they seen how hot he is? I mean, maybe Tony just has to take a trip to the UK and turn on the charm, or just get Hugh Grant to play him again. So, what do you think? Would you swipe right on Tony the Tiger? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other weird history food videos.